Hello everyone, welcome to Lord Pog Gaming, and I'm your humble host, Lord Pog. Today I have another R&R for you Golden Wonders.
I made you some content that made you your favorite open wide.
For those of you who are unaware of what R&R stands for, it's my shorthand for retro review. But R&R can also mean rest and relaxation, which you're more than welcome to do here.
Take a load off, Fanny.
I try to do these R&Rs pretty regularly, as I just got done doing a special 4-part series of them called The Best RPGs of the Sega Genesis, which are in their own special playlist on the channel, and you're more than welcome to check out if you want.
Do it.
Before we get into today's R&R though, first let me do the shameless plug for the channel. If you're new here and you enjoy what I do, then I'd be honored by your subscribing.
You're a daisy if you do.
But regardless if you're new or old to the channel, leave a like and a share on the video, as it helps get the channel out there and really helps me out. Ring my bell for notifications, and sign my guest book while you're here. My guest book being the comments section, of course. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. I won't harp on it.
Well, I don't like to harp on a subject,
I don't
but
care. It comes with me, never have. That's why they call me gregarious.
Let's get into today's R&R, which I'm really excited for, as it's one of my favorite Sega games from my childhood. At the time I played it, there were certainly other games like it, yet nothing compared to its style and story. The game I'm talking about is Flashback, a futuristic, Blade Runner-esque quest for identity, which is actually Flashback's full title, but doesn't show up anywhere else but on the original box art. I'm totally hyped.
Totally?
To be talking about Flashback with you Golden Wonders. So without further ado, let's get on with the review. To begin with, let's first address the reason why Flashback: The Quest for Identity only shows up on the box art and nowhere else in the game. It is because it was labeled as such for US sales, but doesn't seem to be the case anywhere else. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to refer to the game as Flashback and not get hung up on the whole Quest for Identity title. We will talk more about why it's called Flashback: The Quest for Identity in the plot section later, but for now, bear with me.
hold your horses.
Flashback was released for the Amiga in 1992, but wouldn't make it to the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive till 93. It would also see an SNES launch in 93, but if and I'm being honest, when I was a kid, I was unaware of the Nintendo version. Where I came across Flashback was on the Sega channel. And according to what I've discovered about the Nintendo version, Sega's Flashback is the superior Flashback, as Nintendo, in accordance with their family-friendly guidelines, changed a load of things in the game. For example, there's an important section of the game called the Death Tower that Nintendo changed the name of to Cyber Tower. Now, if any of you Golden Wonders out there grew up playing Flashback on the Super NES, and Cyber Tower is the name that you're used to, well, don't misunderstand me here. For me, however, Cyber Tower just doesn't sound right. It's Death Tower, the game show where people go to get massacred for money.
Damn!
Developed by Delphine Software, a French company that was started in '88 and lasted till 2004, they are known for Flashback and its similar predecessor, Another World. Another World is a game similar to Flashback, and another childhood favorite of mine that I'll probably end up doing an R&R for.
You liar!
Well, probably. Both Flashback and Another World are amazing games, but without a shadow of a doubt, the most impressive game by Delphine Software. The game that changed everything, and without it, we'd still be like video game cavemen, scratching the walls of our primitive homes, confused, nay befuddled as we sit alone in the darkness of our abodes and minds, without the fire of Prometheus to light the way. This exceptional game, to which there is no equal, no rival, a game whose very existence makes the angels weep tears of joy in heaven and would end the war in Ukraine if only gifted to Russia. The game I speak of is Shaq Fu. No, seriously, that game was probably the reason Delphine Software never had another major hit on their hands again. Flashback has had an impressive run since its release. It's one of those few games that, at the time, wasn't a Japanese title, but a French one, as Delphine Software was based out of France, and the publisher, US Gold, was based out of England. Oddly enough, considering their name. US Gold primarily was a publisher for PC ports, and have had some impressive names to their portfolio as well, with Spy Hunter and Gauntlet to name a few. US Gold would sign a deal with Capcom to publish their games to the Amiga and the like. Games like Street Fighter and Bionic Commando, which did fairly well. In '96, Eidos Interactive would purchase US Gold, who then would be purchased by Square Enix in '09. Now my question for you Golden Wonders out there, does US Gold and by proxy Square Enix have any claim to part of Flashback's licensing? Because if they have a dog in that fight at all, wouldn't it just be random to see Flashback's main protagonist, Conrad, show up in a Kingdom Hearts game?
Ooh, yeah,
Sunsoft, the video game branch of Sun Corporation, handled the publishing of Flashback in Japan. They mainly dealt with Nintendo, and even secured the licensing to the Addams Family and Batman for a while. So the game Batman, based on the '89 movie, and Addams Family, Fester's Quest for the NES, those were published by Sunsoft. Many a rage quit can be attributed to those two games. Electronic Gaming Monthly would give Flashback's SNES port an 8.25 out of 10, praising it for having better graphics and music than the Genesis.
No, Holden McNeil.
I mean, I don't know about the graphics per se, but Nintendo was pretty good about its graphics back then, but very seldomly did they outshine Sega in the music department. Sega always had these gritty techno grunge bangers that Nintendo seldom, if ever, could match. Off the top of my head, the only game I can think of that they matched that kind of vibe that outshined Sega was Shadowrun, which I've also done a retro review on and you can check out on the channel here. And in the end of it all, that all depends on what is defined as a better soundtrack. Nintendo was always good about offering up good operatic hits you in the chest kind of tracks. The Legend of Zelda is a fine example of that, to which, yeah, Sega couldn't hope to match. Although I maintain that the music in Landstalker came pretty close. But despite all of that, maybe Nintendo was and still is good at delivering on a high fantasy level, but when it comes to that gritty techno-punk rocks and a meat grinder vibe, Sega was unmatched, and part of that was they weren't worried about being wholly family friendly. They went for the more dark and gritty, something that Nintendo still today struggles with on many levels. By the way, Nintendo, I respect you. Please don't make me disappear suddenly for effing around and finding out. Flashback has had much high praise from plenty of sources. IGN, yes, that IGN, has even weighed in now, saying that it's 79th on their top 100 SNES games of all time. I know that the history section of this video has already ran long, but I'm gonna explain something here.
Here we go again.
I understand Flashback was first ported to Amiga, then to console ports, and that it's not just a Sega game, except that it is. Flashback creator Paul Cuisset has even gone on record for Retro Gamer in 2013 by saying, "The best version for me is the Mega Drive version. The game was created for this platform." I read the whole article myself, and Retro Gamer couldn't even believe this, even going as far as to ask Paul Cuisset to repeat himself, to which he confirmed that the Mega Drive / Genesis was the main platform. I'll leave a link to the full article in the description for any of you Golden Wonders out there who are interested in reading about it. The point I'm trying to make here is that while other platformers like the Amiga and SNES had their own ports, Flashback is and always will be a Sega game in spirit, and the best version of it at the time was the Genesis. The fact that IGN would appear years later and try to get in on the action with their own opinion, only to crap the bed in IGN fashion by calling it an SNES game, well, that's IGN for you. Sega would award Flashback with Best Action RPG Game of the Year, and oddly enough, Nintendo Power would award Flashback Best Show of Winter CES, which CES stands for Consumer Electronics Show, and is still going to this day. It's held in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it just had its winter show recently. So even though I firmly believe Flashback is a Sega game that they graciously shared with Nintendo, I gotta hand it to Nintendo for giving Flashback such a high honor. Not too shabby in the legacy that is Flashback. The plot for Flashback, with its futuristic style and conspiracy-driven narrative, borrows heavily from the best movies.
I love movies!
That acted as its predecessors. Blade Runner, Total Recall, and They Live are the three that I hear about the most, and it shows that the creator, Paul Cuisset, had a deep appreciation for the genre. In a world where we have gems like the Shadowrun and Cyberpunk games, Flashback fits perfectly alongside them in the neon future new war genre. Flashback begins with a cutscene that quickly establishes the mystery of the game. Why are you running?
Why are you running? Why are you running?
And who is chasing you? The game's protagonist, Conrad, awakens after being shot down in the jungle of the planet Titan. Conrad has lost his memory, and without any subtext, he's left to wonder why he's in the predicament he's in. Pretty soon he finds a holocube that tells him who he is and that he needs to find his way to New Washington to speak with his buddy Ian. Beyond that, there's no more information to be had, other than a warning that Conrad's life is in danger. It's all pretty ominous, only serving to give more questions than answers. There was a comic book that was published by Marvel Comics for the North American release of the game. It acts as a prequel for Flashback, where we can learn that Conrad is an agent for the GBI, but best I can guess is that GBI stands for Galactic Bureau of Investigation. I'm sure I saw somewhere what GBI stands for, but like most times, my head was probably up my keister.
What?
The comic done well enough, if not a little underwhelming. It takes away from the mystery of the game though, so even though I'm gonna leave a link for it in the description, I highly advise playing Flashback first, if you don't want any spoilers. But if you really must,
Go away!
then I can't stop you. Other than all of what I've said, I'm not gonna go deeper into the plot. I don't want to spoil the game as a whole, but the story is well written and still holds up today. Flashback comes from a time before DEI, so naturally it's worried more about story and character development over propaganda.
We are concerned about trouble and trying to be responsible one-sided news stories playing in our country.
With that said, Flashback can be found on Steam for 99 cents, and I suggest finding any way possible to play. Best way to describe Flashback's gameplay and mechanics is cinematic platforming. Just like Delphine Software's previous installment, Another World, the action of the game relies heavily upon button combinations that are, in theory, supposed to make the action feel more realistic. Does Flashback succeed in doing so? Yes and no. It's nothing for the modern gamer to use combination button inputs these days, with one button performing a particular action only to change said action if combined with the pressing of a second button. God of War is a prime example of that, and I mean the first trilogy. as way of example here. Now you Golden Wonders out there might be saying, but Pog, the OG God of War wasn't a slow-paced platformer that required multiple button combinations, was it?
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
It certainly wasn't slow-paced, to be fair.
To be fair.
But it was a fixed-screen cinematic platformer. It took the formula laid down by the games such as Another World, Blizzard's Blackthorn, Generations Lost, and even the first two Oddworld games to that next level. Just like Flashback took what had been established in Another World, game developers began building upon that particular formula, creating much more faster-paced games like Blackthorn and Generations Lost, with Oddworld and Oddworld Abe's Exodus slowing it back down a bit, yet Oddworld would introduce more modern mechanics and fluidity to the genre. These games were the building blocks for games like God of War to flourish in. God of War took those ideas and put them into a 3D environment with better control response. It might be said that Oddworld Munch's Odyssey was actually the start of this, since it came out before the OG God of War by 5 years.
No way!
And those who say this would be correct, but Munch's Odyssey was so clunky that I truly believe God of War was the full realization of what a true cinematic platformer can be. To make a long explanation short,
You're a bit late for that!
in the case of Flashback, the mechanics are a bit chunky and less responsive. For example, holding the action button while pressing up will make Conrad do a mini jump, but pressing up by itself will initiate him to leap up trying to climb a ledge, regardless if there's a ledge there for him or not. When the action does ramp up and the player has to think quick on their feet, this can cause some miscommunication in the mechanics, and the desired outcome can't always be expected. I personally give the mechanics a pass, since we're talking about a decades-old game that for its time, the mechanics were some of the best out there. The actual kick in the pants is the fact that Flashback did not offer a tutorial mission or anything of the sort to assist in learning the control scheme. It was a cutscene, title screen, and now you're in the jungle.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
Thinking back on it, I didn't even notice and just learned as I went. But can y'all imagine what kind of meltdown a 6-year-old Fortnite player would have without a tutorial?
Little boy, you're going to hell!
Luckily, there's a remastered version out there that does come with a tutorial and even save states, because another wild ride that Flashback offers is checkpoint saves, and not the ability to save whenever one so wishes. These save points in the original Flashback could be so far and in between that one could play through over half a section of the game, then screw up and find themselves at the very start of this section. Sometimes this happens after completing several areas. Then you accidentally walk off a ledge that's a little too high, because yes, Conrad will insta-die from fall damage, and end up what is the equivalent of 20 minutes or more back at the last save. So that's 10 to 20 minutes of gameplay just lost at times. None of that was an issue for me then. Not that I was instantly a pro at Flashback, but because I was used to unforgiving games, I don't hold any of that by what is today's standards could be perceived as shortcomings, especially since we have the Soulsborne genre. Still, if any of that does sound a little too much for you Golden Wonders out there, there's the 2013 remastered version for $9.99 on Steam.
What can I say except you're welcome?
It's not a reboot, just a reimagined version, but I warn you, there are significant changes to the story, so in order to get the full experience of Paul Cuisset's masterpiece, you'll have to play the original version. I addressed the art and music of Flashback earlier in the video when talking about the fundamental differences between Sega and Nintendo in the 90s. To put it into better perspective,
too much. There's too much fucking perspective now.
On average, Nintendo had better graphics and fluid controls, while Sega was more innovative and had better soundtracks. Not always, but again it depends on the definition on what's better and what each individual player believes is better. Saying that Nintendo improved on the graphics of Flashback is, for me, completely dropping the plot. One could compare the statement to modern day Star Wars.
The power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
In terms of missing the point of said artistic expression. The graphics and cutscenes for Flashback were done through what is called rotoscope animation. It wasn't a revolutionary technique, but in some ways it was for Flashback. A lot of you Golden Wonders out there may already know what rotoscope animation is.
Check out the big brain on Brad!
And as such, I may be preaching to the choir, more or less. I myself had some prior knowledge of it, since it was a technique used by Ralph Bakshi when he did the 1978 animated Lord of the Rings film. Then teamed up with Frank Frazetta of Conan art fame to do the 1983 animated movie Fire and Ice, using rotoscope again. Both are pretty good flicks, and I suggest checking them out. Rotoscope animation was first invented by an American animator of Polish descent by the name of Max Fleischer. Okay, so here's a hot take. When reading up on Mr. Fleischer, they called him a Polish American, and that grinds my gears.
Oh, well, it appears I've been fired. Well, as long as I'm no longer working here, let me tell you something. You know what really grinds my gears? You, America.
Even if Mr. Fleischer was born in Poland, he came to America and became a citizen. I'm Hispanic, and I don't refer to myself as Mexican American. I'm an American, same as the people who invented these subheadings as backwards ways of creating division and reversed racism in this country.
What did he say?
If you're a citizen, you're American. Because I guarantee you aren't going to move to Brazil from, say, Germany, and then they are going to call you a German Brazilian. Come to think of it, though, a German Brazilian sounds more like a...
Watch your profanity.
Never mind. I just had to get that off my chest, folks, because I understand not every one of you Golden Wonders out there watching or listening right now are American, but it's my sincerest hope that wherever you live, you can understand the frustration of if there were people trying to hand you a label that makes it seem that you're not quite as much of a citizen as, say, others.
Just 1 calorie, not evil enough.
It just offends me when some in my country...
Nor did we ever, never in California questioned whether or not we as taxpayers...
call me a Mexican American, and I'm a citizen born and raised same as them. So that's why I wanted to do Mr. Fleischer the justice of calling him an American of Polish descent, because he was a citizen then, just as much as I am today. And without his contribution to animation, we wouldn't have the art of rotoscoping, which is the process of tracing over live action footage in order to make the animation look and feel more realistic, which in a lot of ways does. Also, it can make some of what you're watching feel like a fever dream. Seriously, go watch Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. Another film that incorporated rotoscoping was the cult 1981 hit Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal is an anthology animated film based upon the American comic book styled magazine of the same name, which was first published in 1977. I've heard of a lot of criticism for the movie over the past 4 years or so from some saying that the movie is too derogatory and that the hero of the final story is an unrealistic depiction of a woman. First of all, Tarna is a bad bitch.
Nobody says the B word, come on.
She's a force to be reckoned with. Truly a girl boss in every sense of the word.
Are you serious?
And I hate that terminology. Her gender doesn't matter. What matters is she's a hero, and boy does she prove it. If any of you Golden Wonders out there haven't seen Heavy Metal, then it's a must watch. Just don't watch it in front of your kids for gratuitous depictions and such. And if you're a kid younger than 18, then wait till you're 20. Point being, for all those skeptics of Tarna, she was rotoscoped, meaning there was at one time a real-life Tarna out there.
Somewhere out there beneath the pale moonlight.
Again, and I know I've said this before, but there are attractive women in this world.
No! Hello, my name is Sydney Sweeney.
Despite all that, rotoscope was not a common practice in gaming. Even Delphine Software's previous outing, Another World, whose game mechanics are of a similar bent, used a more digital presentation, making the look of the characters more blocky in appearance. Real people had to come together to represent Conrad, for instance, so that he could be traced and put into game format. The look of the game when ported to Sega Genesis was exactly what creator Paul Cuisset had intended Flashback to look and feel like. To say that Nintendo improved upon that would then require them to focus the graphics more. Since game systems at the time were not like film, meaning they did not have the technology of enhanced graphics, it would have required Nintendo to use digital construction, which there in turn takes away from the rotoscope artwork. Think of it as taking away some of one to fit in more of another. We live in a time where digital artwork is the dominant form of artistic expression, and that's fine with me, honestly. There are a lot of talented artists out there that use it as their main bread and butter, and it's really good stuff, unless you're modern Marvel Comics who trace over Google Maps because you don't know how to draw a background with vehicles in it.
What the hell is even that?
However, in the case of Flashback, taking away from the ingenuity of man in order to add machine is not an improvement. Flashback for the Sega Genesis was and is to this day a gem. From the tighter controls of a cinematic platformer, to the music and sound, to the art direction and story, without trying to sound redundant, I urge every last one of you Golden Wonders out there to share in my nostalgia and play Flashback, The Quest for Identity. I want to thank y'all for sharing with me one of my favorite childhood memories. I know for a minute there it sounded like I was standing on a soapbox and just whining. But I honestly can't thank y'all for making it to the end with me. From my very heart and soul, I love y'all. If you're new to the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. And I beseech y'all to leave a like and a share on the video. Regardless if you sub, like, or share though, just y'all being here is the most important thing. Ring my bell for notifications and tell me what you think down in my guest book. Had you ever heard of Flashback before or played it? Have you played the 2013 remastered?
Inquiring minds want to know.
Tell me about it when you sign. And before I go, as always, I want to let you Golden Wonders know. I know I expressed a lot of thoughts on this video, and some of y'all might not agree with them. I want y'all to know that that's okay. We don't always have to agree, because the one thing we do agree on, the thing that allows us all here to stand on common ground, is our love of games and gaming. For that, it doesn't matter if we always agree, because I love y'all. I would fight any horde or foe by your side. You're always welcome in my lobby. Y'all come back now and stay golden.